Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast. An exploration of ancient wisdom.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back. We are on episode number
52.
52. That means we've been doing this for a whole year, guys.
Literally an entire year.
goodness.
Our Lord Sir Producer Abhijit was holding up the sign that says 1 full year. And I was like, wait, 1 full year since what? Since the beginning? Since we decided this idea? Since what? And yeah, 52 weeks apparently. Well, of course, I should know that as a fact.
It's been magical. Thank you for following along for 52 weeks with us, 1 whole year. We've been getting a lot of feedback on our Instagram if you're following us at Modern Yogi Podcast. And people are binging. People are binging our episodes.
We
That's
talked about this. We're
exciting.
like binge worthy now. That's very exciting.
We're so humbled and
Oh
so
my
thankful that people are deciding to spend multiple hours as if this was Netflix, just like listening to our voices and listening to Krishna's words in the Gita.
Because you guys, we pour our hearts into this. It takes a whole team to do this. We love we live for this, like we just talked about before this started, how Ted Lasso, the one football star, was like, football is life. So for us, this is life.
Gita is life. Modern Yoga Podcast is life.
So this is what we love doing. And we would not be able to do this if it weren't for people listening and engaging. It's a two-way road. So we're just super happy for this opportunity to talk about what gives us life.
Absolutely.
Thank
and special
you
shout
so
out
much.
to our producer, Abhijit, and our social media director, Ella, for always being there. This is a team effort, and it wouldn't be possible without those two.
It really wouldn't. It wouldn't. Ella was asking me today how I feel about us, getting more followers on Instagram. And I really told her, I was like, I don't think we could have done it without every single person in here. Like, I think, there's the consistency, the motive, like the initiative from Ella, like Shamali's posting and networking and doing all the things, and like all of us being here, not every week, but when we record, being so consistent. I just think I'm really grateful for everyone, because it's been amazing just for me personally to be able to like study the Gita with y'all and to have you guys as my book club buddies.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And the great thing is we just show up and read, and like Abhijit and Ella like literally take it and then put it out into the world and promote it. And so you wouldn't be able to hear about this podcast if it wasn't for those two. So
and I feel that's how you know that like divinity is backing you up, when it all kind of just seamlessly comes together. Every single component, every person in this room just kind of magically came together and it flowed, I mentioned before that after our first episode that we recorded, we looked around each other at the table and we were like, whoa, this was magic. Whoa. Our producer was like, this really has legs to go somewhere. And, we've talked about this, how you can be the closest of friends, but we don't know how that dynamic will play out on a talk show, on a podcast. So that's why after the first episode and we saw what potential this had, we were like, this is very freaking cool.
Yeah. I mean, even the fact that we got together and we're like, how are we going to do this? Right? Like every part of it, I think it was Krishna's hand that said like, do it this way. And because we just sat down and we were like, okay, we're recording. Like we studied before and we did all the things, but then we went and it was just, it flowed. But how could we have known that it was going to go that way? Right. Yeah. It's really just the mercy. So
I think I just got chills. My hair stood on end, because I think the more you place awareness in divinity, the more, like you said, you can feel his hand guiding you in your life. And when something feels like you're walking uphill, it's a struggle, a lot of times it's because you're not tapping into the flow of the direction you're meant to go in. So this is so nice that it is flowing. We put effort, we put our endeavor, but it's flowing. So
yes, not to say that it's easy all the time, but we're super happy to be doing it.
The Gita is life. Gita's life. Gita is life. And love it. Speaking of the Gita, we are on chapter 7, text number 15. Anybody want to do a quick recap?
Yes, I have a bit of a macro recap. So we talk a lot about the philosophy. We break it down. Sometimes it's easy to lose sight on the bigger story. What is even going on here? So right now we are moving from karma yoga, which is the beginning 6 chapters are all about karma yoga. Essentially how to live in this world. But we seek more than just this world, than just being equal in mind in this existence. We seek to be moved within our hearts. So this next section that we've been doing, starting with chapter 7, the middle 6 chapters are all about bhakti yoga and divine love and connection of the heart with the supreme divinity. And this is the essence of all of our beings. that love, that connection. So that's the section we're entering now that I think is important to keep in mind. First 6 chapters, karma yoga, action, all about maneuvering this existence. Middle 6 chapters, is all about divine love. And I think an important point to remember is mind control, or the first 6 chapters that we talked about karma yoga, how to control the mind, all the technical stuff. Mind control doesn't just come from determination.
When you say mind control, it sounds like evil.
Like Black Mirror.
Right. Okay. I can say it in other words. Learning the tools on how to control your mind. But
That sounds less evil. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
That was good. Thank you.
So I think an important point is the tools in how to control your mind doesn't just come from our own determination, discipline, and endeavor to be detached, but controlling our mind ultimately comes when our mind is absorbed in something much, much higher. So to set us up, at the end of chapter 6, Krishna sets us up by saying, okay, now in the middle 6 chapters, he's going to explain how to immerse our minds in this divine connection and bathe our minds in this divine love. And when we can learn to do that, everything else becomes easy.
I like Shalmi's little TED Talk in the middle of this, just explaining the first 6 chapters out of nowhere. I appreciated that.
It's really
That was
nice.
good.
It's good. I mean, we are a year in. If someone's just listening for the first time, they can
Yeah,
be like, oh, that's where we are. So
love it.
Right.
Awesome.
And one more tidbit to set us up. You see, the middle chapters, Krishna's, like I said, explaining this science on how to develop divine connection with God. Because when you do connect to the divine in love and you see divinity in everything and everyone, then you naturally see how we're all connected with a divine relationship. And I think, to take a side note, people exploit other people, objects, nature, because they don't feel a connection because they haven't developed even the connection with the divine supreme source within themselves. So that's why we need to really connect to the divine. And that love is always ever present and expanding.
So if I am hearing you right, the
Yes.
first 6 chapters of the Gita were about controlling your mind
Right,
and
all
your
about-
senses.
exactly.
And learning the difference between the body and the soul, all that fun stuff.
Beautiful.
And then the next middle chapters are all about getting to know who God is.
Exactly. Because
Beauty.
like we said, you can't just, I'm going to control my mind now on my sheer determination. We need to be tapped into something higher, something that motivates us. So Krishna laid the foundation in the first 6 chapters. Now with chapter 7, we're moving into the middle 6 chapters, and that's all about that divine love. That's something higher that will give us the motivation of, why do I even need to control my mind and senses?
Yeah. I think chapter 7 is kind of like going on a blind date with God.
Exactly.
A little bit.
Oh,
And you're-
it is like a relationship, right? Like you were saying, like first you got to work on yourself. Maybe you go to therapy, you like do all the
Right.
things that you need to do to figure out who you are and like
and what you want.
what you need, how to communicate, all the things, right? And then you meet the person, you're like, well, now I want to get to know you and I want to
Yes.
understand who you are. And that's what we're doing here, yeah?
Ooh, you guys set it up beautifully for the last point I was going to say about getting to know you. Because, see, in the very first text of chapter 7, which this will conclude the recap, because I know we got to move on. So when Shama starts giving me the face of like, are you going to go on one of your tangents or can we move on? No, we keep each other on task. It's good. So see, all of chapter 7 is knowledge of the absolute. Like they were saying, going on a blind date, getting to know someone. Because in text 1 of chapter 7, Krishna says, the beginning of love is to hear about the beloved. So when you hear about the qualities of divinity, you'll begin to see divinity everywhere and see that divinity has always been present in your life.
That's
and it's
beautiful.
reciprocating with you here and now. So then we've said it before, the more you know about someone, the more you'll love them, but the more you'll be able to give your heart and mind and in that reciprocation of love. So that was what Krishna set up in text 1 of chapter 7. And that's basically where we've been, getting to know about the divine.
Yeah, so for the last couple of texts, he's been talking about like who he is. He's the strength of the strong. He is
The taste of water.
yeah, all these qualities, right? He's independent from this material nature, but he's also the creator of the material nature. And he's been giving us tidbits about like how the existence of the world and him and us and how we all relate to each other, but based on understanding him better, right? So in the last text, Krishna is talking about how there's 3 modes of material nature and how they're very difficult to overcome. But one thing for sure is that he is not controlled by them, right? He is independent. And so now we're moving on to talking about different people who are attracted or not attracted to Krishna.
All right.
Yeah?
Foreshadowing. Dun, dun, dun.
But before we get to that, the invocation, please, ladies.
Yes.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Shakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Translation. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. All right, chapter 7, text number 15. Priyadarshini.
All right. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me.
Ooh. Does God not like atheists? Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
And atheists don't like God.
Look at that. It's a
Balance.
perfect relationship.
No, rewind. He's
yes.
basically just delineating.
Nice.
There we go.
Very good.
Cha-ching.
Good word.
He's outlining which types of people are not attracted to him.
Yeah.
And
Can I read it again from the beginning? Because
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, when I read this, I was like, oof, that's so heavy, right?
Right.
And then I looked up some of these words and it made me feel a little better. So I'm going to try to make y'all feel better, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to replace some words. Ready? Those poorly behaving lawbreakers
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's go.
who are extremely foolish.
Right.
And then the other stuff is the same.
So basically, you just thesaurus.com the first 3 words of that verse.
Yeah, but because miscreant sounds really intense, but it really just means people who are behaving poorly, who are going against the laws.
Got
and then
it.
Grossly foolish just means extremely foolish in the sense that they're just kind of seeking nonsense.
Just not
Right.
regular foolish, grossly foolish. Okay, got it. And they're the lowest amongst mankind. Okay, cool. Whose knowledge is stolen by illusion.
Knowledge is stolen by illusion.
Right.
Just means that they're caught up in this rat race. They really want the money. They really want they want all the things, like the materialistic stuff. They want everything, the women, the man, whatever it might be. They are completely in a mirage of what they think the world is.
And then they who partake of the atheistic nature of demons do not surrender unto me. So he's basically saying that the people that aren't the wisest in society, who are kind of misguided in society, they never turn to God.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting segue, because you say the wisest, and Prabhupada anticipated that. He's like, at this point, a question arises. How is it that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of ordinary men do not surrender unto Krishna, the all-powerful personality? So he continues to answer it at the bottom. Because, right, when we read this, we think, oh, so basically silly people don't surrender. But
It's not silly necessarily in the sense of, like, if you think of
I'm silly.
Like,
I like that.
like a scientist is a very intelligent person,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so
Definitely
we're
not
not
as
talking
silly.
about that, because there's different types of intelligence.
Right.
And like, we're talking about the kind of intelligence where you understand, like, we are not this body, there's a soul, and like, what is our greatest purpose in life? A scientist might not have that kind of knowledge, and that makes them foolish in some ways. Yes?
Because imagine being so smart and everything else. So this is kind of reminds me of like the school that I went to. So I went to a really prestigious business school. My students around me, what are they called? Colleagues?
Alumni?
Peers. That's it. Peers, right? My colleagues in academia, my schoolmates, right? They were geniuses, right? I don't know how I got into that school, but they were geniuses, and they could read an entire text from back to front and memorize it, but they didn't know how to cross the street. You know what I mean? So like, it was like this.
I'm sorry,
like,
what?
Like, they didn't know how to use common sense when they're out in the world, right? But
Different
they were so good at book smart. So I think you're right. Like, the scientist is very, very intelligent, but the fact that they can't figure out the purpose of life kind of makes them a little foolish in a way.
Yeah, and then like there's different types of intelligence, right? Because like the businessman is not the same as the scientist. They have a different kind of intelligence where they can really be charismatic and talk to people and do all these things. So there's so many different types of intelligence, but they don't necessarily matter so much if you don't have the understanding of what your purpose in life is.
Right.
Like
right.
at the
real.
end of the day, like you won't be as happy or as peaceful if you don't understand your position in relationship to Krishna.
Yep.
Right. So basically Prabhupada's saying, so all of these people, these philosophers, scientists, very, materially intellectual people pose themselves as such for material gain because they're not truly accepting what is the supreme or divine plan. They just try to manufacture with our own minds and intellects our worldly plans. And consequently, we just complicate our existence further and further in our vain attempts to solve different problems.
And could you imagine a world, a utopia, for instance, where our worldly leaders were Krishna conscious or were God conscious at the least, right? Could you imagine the different type of world that we would live in where our budgets wouldn't be spent on defense, but they would be on protecting Mother Earth, you know what I mean? Like they would be on social justice programs and not, just wasted on people in Congress. Just, I mean, I don't know. I just think it would be this beautiful utopia.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I always dreamed of that as a kid. Like imagine a world in which I was a kid.
Imagine
so I was like,
all the people.
Sorry. No, it's okay. I was picturing like, imagine a world where everyone's vegetarian. Like even that made me so happy to think
Little
about.
Priya dreaming
I know,
of a greater existence for this world. How wholesome is that thought?
I grew up in South America. Everyone eats meat. It's like very, very different, right? Yes. So like, I mean, I live in Los Angeles now where there's so many vegans and it's totally fine and different, but it was a different world back then. So I can definitely understand your point.
If all the leaders had a deep, like spiritual compass within them, that would change everything because spirituality isn't just about how much philosophy do we know, how many times a week do we go to a temple or a church. It's about your entire worldview, your entire way of perceiving everything is fundamentally totally different.
Yeah, I think even just the fundamental understanding of we're not the body would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just having that understanding, right? Yeah. Racism, sexism, like all these things wouldn't be there, but they have to be there because everyone has desires and we're here to fulfill them. And unfortunately, this world is created so that everyone can kind of fulfill their desires. And so we just have to work to get out of that and just do our thing.
So it's interesting. This next part in the purport, it says that the material energy, we might think, it's so bad. It clouds us over. It confuses us. That can't be Krishna. But no, wrong. Here it says the material energy works fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It has no independent authority. It works as the shadow moves in accordance with the movements of the object. So the material energy is very powerful, but ultimately it's under Krishna's control. And under this illusion, the modes of passion and ignorance, all of our plans are baffled. We become bewildered when we try to act separately from the divine supreme plan.
And I want to bring up this notion of like we've talked about Maya right before, right?
Yes.
And Maya, she's a goddess. It's Maya Devi, right? And so like there's all these different gods and goddesses that we talked about in like the first and second chapter, right? There's a god of the water. There's a god of money. There's a god of finding a good husband. There's a god of everything, right? Thunder, lightning, all that fun stuff, right? There's a god of everything. Yes. And so there's also this goddess of illusion. Her name is Maya, and she is the one that creates this like matrix-like atmosphere that we all live in, right? And I think I mentioned this before, but I think it's important. It's like the way my mentor explained it to me was that Maya Devi is a goddess and she directly reports to Krishna, right? And her job is to protect Krishna at all costs. So she creates this world of all these fun distractions because she wants to make sure that you don't get through. And if you get through and you're still attached to things, you're going to break Krishna's heart. And her job is to make sure that you don't break Krishna's heart. And that's why she makes this world so enticing and entangling and all of that stuff. Because she doesn't want you to break Krishna's heart at the end of the day.
I love that so much. It's like a best friend. Krishna's best friend. It's just protecting. Yeah.
Right. And so that's this notion of illusion, right? It's a lot of people get under Maya's grasp and they lose sight of who they actually are.
Right. So basically the next parts of the purport break down a little further. Okay, who are these four types of people? Should we just do a brief little...
Yes, let's do it.
Who's the first type? Shama, I know that you had a good grasp of it last time.
Atheist.
Is
I don't know where we are. Do the first
Foolish
one.
people.
There you go, foolish people.
Right. And they say that the typical example of someone who represents this foolish person would be the example of the ass, the animal. Not that they're calling them
The donkey.
The donkey. There we go. That's a
Who calls
more
a donkey an ass?
in olden days, maybe. I don't know. You know,
Only in the scriptures.
Me and my ass gotta go up the mountain. So the donkey.
So the donkey doesn't really know for whom or why it's working so hard all day at night, and it doesn't even matter as long as it just works. I get a little food, a little water, work, kind of robotically. So that image of the donkey or the ass, as they used to say in olden times.
Nobody says that.
I know.
I thought you said us.
She just wants to say ass.
It's like, I'm sorry, what's happening?
Okay, so the donkey is the first one.
Right. And this is basically the position of a foolish, fruitive worker who doesn't know for whom he should work. You know, we want to just. Oh, and there's an interesting line here. I actually underlined it. It says, these workers work very hard day and night to clear the burden of self-created duties. So they say they have no time basically to hear of the immorality and immortality. Sorry, not immorality. The immortality of the living being. And I thought it was so interesting how they use the word self-created duties. Because so many times, what's people's number one excuse for not dedicating time? Time to spirituality. I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm busy. Yeah, tomorrow. Today, no, it's been a long day at work.
Maybe
blah,
when I'm
blah,
50.
blah. Maybe
when I retire.
When I'm older, yeah.
When I have time. Yeah.
So I love how here Prabhupada totally called it out and said, these are self-created duties that we burden ourselves with, because really we have to make the time for things that matter. You can't tell your whatever spouse or future spouse, if you don't have one, sorry, don't got time for you. That relationship will end pretty quickly if you say something like that.
Yeah.
So you have to make time in your day for the things that really matter. And the whole point of why we're even in this world is to grow, evolve, and connect with our divine source. So I would say this is kind of important to put a little bit of time.
It's kind of just a little bit, you know, like just. But no, it's a really cool point that you're saying, because it is true. Like, I think we get caught up in like all the responsibilities of this material world, and we sometimes forget to prioritize like the ultimate goal and the real path of like spirituality, which is so fulfilling and so, you know, amazing, and it can bring us so much happiness, really. But we're like, oh, I don't have time, like you were saying, right? So I think that's a really cool point.
And
so that was number one.
One more comparison with the donkey is interesting, because the donkey and the worker who has no idea of where they're going, they're working hard day and night for the benefit of an illusory master, ignorant of who their real master is. Because maybe we don't like the word master. It sounds so controlling, but we want to feel like I'm totally free. But we have a boss or a master in every aspect of life. You're going to have to answer to somebody, you know? So you're going to choose, am I going to answer to my senses, to the boss at my job, or to the divine source, the divine master who has my best interest at heart? But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to have to answer to somebody. Isn't there that song? There's a song. Oh my God, I'm blanking, but there's totally a song about we all have to serve somebody.
21 questions
to serve somebody.
and they all
I'm just making it up.
No,
Anyway, next episode, tune in for the next time. I'll remember the song. Whatever.
Okay. The second kind of person,
just singing two different songs.
Completely. There's many songs about masters.
The second person that doesn't what?
Doesn't want to
Doesn't want to love God.
Yeah, they're not really attracted to.
Okay,
They're
who is
basically
the second
called
person?
Naradhama, or the lowest of mankind.
What does that mean?
Nara means human being, and Adhama means the lowest. So basically, Prabhupada says, out of
Sanskrit word.
out of 8,400,000 different species of living beings, there are 400,000 human species. Out of those, there are numerous lower forms of human life that are mostly uncivilized. Because how do we think, when we think of someone who's a civilized human being, those are those who have some form of regulative principles of social, political, and religious life. So basically, those who are socially and politically developed but have no religious principles are in this category.
Interesting.
Because then they make an interesting point. Religion without God is not truly religion, because the purpose of following different religious principles is to ultimately get to know our source and our relationship with him.
Okay, so number one was the donkey class, and number two is the uncivilized class. Is that right?
Yeah,
Fair.
I think so.
Different
All
times.
right,
but
number three.
Yeah. Number 3 is...
Oh, you know what? One more fun fact about the second category.
Yes.
No process is strictly followed now in any part of the world to develop this ultimate divine relationship. So therefore, 99.9% of the population is in this second category. Who that basically, in very simple terms, we're civilized in all aspects, minus the one that really counts, which is why are we here in this world in the first place?
Can I ask then what's the difference between that and the donkey people?
Because
Because
the donkey
I think
people is
the
an
donkey
actual
people,
donkey, no?
Are you joking?
No, I don't know. I didn't read the purport.
Wait, I have to know. That's a joke. You're funny. That's a joke.
Yeah, it's a joke.
I'm dying here. Oh my God.
No.
So that was, okay, in case anyone thought number 1 was real donkeys.
No one thought it was real donkeys. Okay.
Well, you never know. You actually did.
I didn't read it beforehand.
My eyes are going to water and that's downhill from here.
My eyes are watering too.
Okay, number 1 was not a real animal. It was an analogy for the types of human beings who are very just
The
mind shut off.
hardworking donkeys.
Yeah, I'm thinking factory workers.
But not insulting factory workers if there are any factory workers.
But I mean,
out
I'm just
there.
trying to figure out the difference between the first kind of people and the
Right.
second kind of people. And I'm wondering if you know.
Well,
the
I think
difference.
there's different interpretations, but the way I took it was category number 2 at least was civilized in some aspects. They had some sense of social, political civilization.
So they're categorizing people based on their jobs a little bit. They're kind of saying like everyday like 9-to-5ers are in the first category, maybe.
Could be jobs, I
and then
guess,
the second and the second category is like, politicians or this or that who have some sort of maybe.
Oh, no.
I thought it was
No?
more about consciousness because you can chime in a second, but number 1 was basically our minds are turned off in all aspects of our life. Where category number 2, our minds are turned off in the one most important aspect, which is our religious duty.
Gotcha.
That's what I was going to say too.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Okay, are we on number 3 now?
Yeah. Okay. That's a cool distinction. I really appreciate that, Shamli.
All right. And one last point here. I did read the purport and took a million notes because this is an important point about our education system. So basically, when the whole population becomes this section, which already Prabhupada said 99.9% of the population is Naradhama. Producer Abhijit, am I pronouncing the Sanskrit correctly? Naradhama.
His mic is not on right now.
So, I'm going to take that as a yes, I am. So naturally, when all of these people in positions of power are in this aspect of their minds are turned off in the most important facet of our lives, which is our spiritual connection, naturally then the Prabhupada writes, so-called education is made null and void by the powerful energy of physical nature. So if you think about it, that makes so much sense when how many people finish how many years are we in the education system and how many people finish feeling like, yes, I have a deep sense of identity, of the purpose of my life, of satisfaction, sense of self and achievement. No, are you kidding me? Because when people in positions of power have you're laughing, Priya.
No. Just keep going. You're doing great. You're doing great.
Cool. When they have no connection to what is really the essence of life, then it's a trickle down effect. And no then social aspect of life will implement that unless you do it on your own or with your family, whatever. But in the wide masses of people, and here it says 99.9% of people might be civilized in all aspects minus the one that counts. So naturally our education system then is not going to be upheld with deep moral and spiritual codes, and we're not teaching our children what really matters. And these are the people who go on to become the future leaders of our world.
Yeah, we can definitely agree to that.
So number 1, they have their brain completely turned off.
Yeah.
And number 2, just a little bit turned off.
Just a little bit. Yeah, sure.
Okay, got it. All right, cool. Number 3, this class is called, does anybody want to attempt the Sanskrit definition?
I was like, whoa, go for it. And then you just...
No, it's called Mayaya Parata Jnana.
I see the long
Okay,
word.
and so these are
Maya,
essentially, these are the most learned people of our society. So great philosophers, poets, literati, and scientists. Not to be confused by Illuminati, but literati. So these are like the top most like scholars and scientists of that class.
It's interesting. It almost goes in a triangular pyramid with the bottom, like our minds completely turned off, the middle of the triangle, a little bit turned off, and the top triangle, very bright people, but still turned off to the most important aspect.
In some ways, I gotta say, it definitely is about the mind being turned off, but it still feels like a little bit of a conversation about like status in society and like the position you're in, and like even kind of like the what is it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like the very bottom, they don't have their needs met, right? Like the first category of people, they don't have their needs met. So how can they even think about God or purpose or anything beyond, because they're just so busy focusing on like the everyday, I got to get the food, I got to get the money, I got to get the thing, right? And then the second category is like, okay, well, I have my needs met a little bit more. I have education, I have a job, but like I'm still caught up in that world, so I can't even think about that. And then the third is like, oh, I have enough of my needs met that I'm a philosopher. Like I'm not even just like a regular everyday worker. I'm like doing something that doesn't pay the bills, but I'm fine. And I still don't have the mindset to like actually be able to, think of purpose beyond. Right?
Yeah. I think this third class can be summed up in this Taylor Swift lyric. And if Ella is around, it's like this covert narcissism described as altruism, right? And it's like these people who think that they're doing this great benefit for society, but it's actually mostly for their own ego. Is that right, Ella? Right? Covert narcissism hidden as altruism.
I like it.
Thank you, Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Shout out to Taylor Swift. And you know what's very interesting? In this third class of people, they also, since they are the philosophers, the scholars, the learned people, the scientists, etc., all the unauthorized interpretations of the Gita, because right now we're reading the version that is the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And what would you say, ladies? What does as it is mean?
As it is.
It basically means that there's no independent interpretation of Krishna's words or like misdirection about them. That's why you get like a proper text, which is Krishna actually the words he said, and then you get a purport, which is like Prabhupada adding like understanding for us to understand it better.
Exactly.
But for other people, sometimes they'll change the actual text of what Krishna say to kind of benefit what they think it means,
or their own ego, or their
whatever
own story,
it might be, right?
Whatever.
And it disrupts the actual message.
So quite literally, as it is, as Krishna spoke it thousands and thousands of years ago. So at the bottom of this third section of the people who are not attracted to Krishna is what we're still talking about. Many unauthorized interpretations of the Gita are done by people in this class who are outside of our parampara system, which means outside of this line of ancient lineage of teacher, disciple, teacher, disciple. And Prabhupada says these interpretations are so many stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual understanding. And I'm going to say that again, they're stumbling blocks. And many people think, what's the big deal? I can read any version out there. They are literally stumbling blocks if they change the whole essence and what's the point of the Gita anyway. And the point is to get closer to Krishna, to love Krishna.
Have we talked about how in some of the interpretations of the Gita, Krishna's name is not even mentioned? Like, how could you have a Gita without Krishna in it? Whereas here you would have Krishna's name in every single page.
And you know what? When you are very new, I think, to the Gita, something like that might seem like, well, yeah, so what's the big deal? One character is taken out of the story. Okay, big deal. Right? Playing devil's advocate. What would you say to that? Because many people who are new to this might feel, Krishna's just a character. What's the big deal if an author removes it and adds a lot of insight? I mean, what? We still get the gist of it, right?
I think the fact that there's only two people in this conversation and you take out one person, it's like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Doesn't sound like anything good.
And basically, that one other person talking, Krishna, is basically giving you the whole point of the Gita.
He is the knowledge.
He is the knowledge. He is the essence. And he is the final goal of the Gita.
Yeah.
So you're removing the character who is the final destination of these pages.
And if Arjuna is just having an existential crisis by himself in this entire book, then we're just watching him have a meltdown, essentially, without any guidance.
And like you said, I mean, I don't remember the Taylor Swift lyric, but like you were saying, these people really think they're doing something great.
Yeah.
They really think, I am translating the Bhagavad Gita, but actually it's a little bit misguided.
And in fact, to be faithful to the words originally spoken, I think shows great humility, because oftentimes when someone wants to add all these flowery language and their own interpretation, it's to stroke their own ego. I'm so great. Look at my understanding. I took it in this new innovative way. But Prabhupada was so chaste to wanting to retain the original message by Krishna. And I think that shows great humility and depth of character.
For sure.
And the last one is self-proclaimed atheists. Dun,
Yes.
dun, dun. Okay,
Dun,
so
dun,
that makes
dun.
sense, right? Okay, so if the first one is, and I think you beautifully described it, Priya, it's like Maslow's hierarchy. The first class is the people that can't even fulfill that bottom layer. The second, who are kind of attuned, like politically, socially, they might be woke in some ways, but they're not actually like real woke. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And the third one is the scientists, the philosophers,
Prabhupada says the deluded
the
speculators.
deluded
They
speculators.
really think they're woke.
yeah,
But they're not woke at all.
Not woke at all.
And they're the kind that like, they're like, oh, I'm working towards woke. Like I definitely am there. And they're actually not at all.
Right.
And then the fourth one is just the ones that are like holding the billboards of atheism. You know what
They're
I mean?
like, no, thanks.
Yeah.
And you
they're
know,
like-
there's
yeah.
different types of atheists, because when I think of maybe a lot of young people who say they're atheists, it's just because they haven't stumbled upon something that they really believe in. So they're like, I guess I'm atheist. They're not bad people. They just haven't found the knowledge that inspires them.
Or they've had bad experiences with a
Right.
particular faith or another.
Different reasons.
I mean, I was a kind of an atheist, like throughout high school. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I had a bad experience with like what I had known to be this overall type of spiritual path that my family was on, and I was like, nope, not for me. And then I was like, and then I just kind of rejected everything. Right? It was only until later in my life where I was like, okay, let me do a little bit more research on what speaks to my heart, but also speaks to the rational part of my brain, and it makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Actually, I've had conversations with atheists, and some of them are really open to actually having conversations about Krishna or like even just philosophy, because in their mind it just hasn't ever made sense, right? Like whatever religion, whatever philosophy, whatever it is, like it didn't really hit all the things that they would want from life, and so they would be open to having a conversation with me. And I think there's so like you're right. There's so many different types of people who perceive themselves as atheists, or who would identify that way.
So it's not like, like you're an atheist, you're a bad person. So like there's many different types, motives out there.
Just like we don't think other religions are also bad either. It's just maybe what the
Different
your karmic
destinations.
desire also
Well, it's
has
interesting.
been.
Priya, you're foreshadowing. Krishna's about to talk about desire, because he is so loving and inclusive that he'll cater to whatever desire you have and send you on the path that's going to fulfill your desires.
Ooh,
Right.
wonderful. Okay. Can we move on to text number 16? Yes.
Shama Sangita, take it away.
All right. Oh, best among the Bhartas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me. The distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute.
Interesting. So we
Very
just talked
cool.
about people who aren't attracted to Krishna. Now we're shifting the script and we're talking about, unlike Prabhupada says, the miscreants or the people who weren't attracted. These four types of people, they adhere to different regulative principles of the scriptures. They live a life in mode of goodness. They're seeking something, or they're so fed up with the world that'll lead them to seek something. And they're basically called, does anyone want to take a stab at the Sanskrit?
Sukritna.
That's really
Beautiful.
close.
Stuck the landing. Stuck the landing.
All right.
The accent was really funny.
It reminded me like of an old lady who's like, let me talk to you about this ancient knowledge.
Sukritna.
That's pretty good. I like it.
Okay, so it's kind of funny right now that God is actually explaining, here are the 4 types of people that will never, ever talk about me or love me, and
Or
I
who
know
don't
this.
have
Like,
a
like I
natural
feel like
tendency.
Krishna's kind of self-aware at this point. You know what I
very
mean? Like he's
self-aware.
very he's done the work. He's been to therapy. He's very self-aware of like who's never gonna love him.
Who's Krishna's therapist? Krishna.
Krishna. I was
He
just
just looks
like
at himself in the mirror and he
himself.
goes, I am great. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
It's probably Krishna, right? So he's done the work, right? He's like healed his wounds, right? And so like he is very self-aware as to he knows the 4 people that will never love him. And then he's also telling us that the 4 people that usually come crawling back to him. You know what I mean?
But interestingly enough, I also love this because it's like he knows that out of these 4 people, usually these people are not necessarily coming to him just because they like him, but they're coming to him because they want something from him.
Right. Exactly. Because he's saying these persons come to me for devotional service under different conditions. They're not pure devotees. And he's not saying that in a super negative way. He's just very realistic, because they still have some aspirations to fulfill in exchange for devotional service.
They're basically like, I'll be your friend if you give me a ride in your Mercedes.
Or it's the type of person that, how often, in a very simple way, how often do we just pray when we need something? Do we
Yes.
pray when
Right,
times
right.
are really good, And because pure devotional service is without any aspiration, without any desire, we literally just want to give Krishna our love and our service with no ulterior motive.
So the first one is the distressed, right? Is the people that are not having a good time and they're searching for some sort of meaning in life.
Before we get to that, can I say something real quick?
Hondo.
So it says here, when these four kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified by the association of pure devotees, they also become pure devotees. So basically, by being around people who are really into selfless service and who are focused on getting to know Krishna better, they can become also in that mood of selfless service, right?
Okay.
But it also says, as far as miscreants are concerned, right? For them, devotional service is very difficult because their lives are selfish, irregular, and without spiritual goals. But even some of them, by chance, when they come in contact with a pure devotee, also become pure devotees. So I just thought that was a really, really cool line because it's showing that we all have a chance at the end of the day. It's just some are more likely than others to come into this path.
Right. And sooner or later, it'll lead you there. Because so many times when we become distressed, we become fed up with the world. Then that leads us to like, isn't there something else? Then that it's a whole trickle effect, right?
Yeah.
And basically, so he summarizes on the whole, when the distressed, the inquisitive, the seeker of knowledge, and those who are in need of money are free from all material desires, which will happen in time, patience, and practice. That's my words, not the purport. And when they fully understand that material remuneration has nothing to do with spiritual improvement, they also become pure devotees. So as you're saying, Priya, they always have a chance. And Krishna recognizes this, that sooner or later, these four different paths will lead you. Some might be just a little more direct, like the one who's actually searching for knowledge of Krishna. You know, you might get there a little faster, but you're all going to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also I know I'm going back a little bit. I like the description of why it's hard for the miscreants to do devotional service because they're selfish, irregular, and without spiritual goals. And I think that those are so easy to do, even if you even if you do care about Krishna, even if you do want to do devotional service, you can be selfish and be like, well, I got to prioritize me, or
the person who passively loves Krishna, right? But doesn't want to actually put in the work.
And it's very, if categorizing these are miscreant qualities feels really harsh because I feel like even as a person, we have these qualities sometimes, right? How regulated are we all the time? How selfless are we all the time? How many spiritual goals do we have all the time? So it's just, I really like this because it's kind of saying even the imperfect have a chance and also recognize these qualities. These qualities don't help us in growing in our path,
Yeah.
Are we all just miscreants at the end of the day?
I was about to say,
and it's always.
We're working on it.
We're trying.
And reframing, I think it's from the perspective of Prabhupada is the old man, grandfather of all of us who's saying it with love and compassion. Like, don't be misguided. Don't be a miscreant. Come on, just come back to Krishna. Yeah. Focus.
So a self-aware Krishna knows that the four types of people that come to him are the ones that are sad, right? Because it's really hard to remember God when everything is hunky-dory dandy, right? Yeah. So we get it. When things are going kind of crappy in our lives, we kind of look to the sky a little bit and we say, oh my God, why me? What are the answers? I need some sort of guidance. Right. So that's the distress, the desire.
Side note about the distress. Father Pio, who I've quoted before, says, blessed is the fall that makes you look up to the heavens.
I love that line. Father Pio. The second one is someone who's looking for money, right?
Yeah, or in need of money, actually. As I read on, it changed from desire for wealth to in need for money.
Please, God, help me. Please help me.
You could also be in that kind of position where it's struggling, right? That's another different kind of struggle.
And then the inquisitive, this is the Curious George type of character.
Yeah.
Who's just really just trying to,
why is this guy blue?
A philosophizer, because that ultimately will lead you to answers of the absolute.
Yeah. If their mind and heart are open enough. Yeah. And the last one is someone who is in search of the absolute. Someone who's actually looking
who's just
for
I want to
God.
know who is God.
Yeah. All right.
Wonderful. Okay, ladies.
Amazing.
Love it. Thank you so much for
1 year.
Oh, yes, 1 year. 52 weeks. Thank you for sticking with us for one entire year.
Beautiful.
All right. See you next time.
Bye. Until next time. Bye. Hello, beautiful souls. If you like what you're hearing, please follow us on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast.
And if you love what you're hearing, please make sure to share a link to our podcast at Modern Yogi Podcast with all your friends, families, and long-lost cousins.
And if you have any questions at all, send us a DM on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Thank you for listening to
The Modern Yogi.